Hello, everyone. Hello, I'm Cindy Runger, president of Seattle Rotary, and I'm happy to welcome you all to our Wednesday meeting. For those of you who are new to Rotary, there are 1.2 million of us around the world who are dedicated to a life of leadership and service, and Seattle Rotary is one of the largest Rotary clubs in the world, and because of that, we are able to attract world-class speakers. We are able to make an impact locally and globally, and also we have a fantastic network of community and business leaders. So I'm excited about today's meeting. We have member anniversaries to celebrate, a new member, Linda Sharon, to welcome, and the founders of WeConnect, Murphy Jensen and Daniela, Luzi, Tudor, as our main program. And it is always a beautiful day when we have Rabbi Daniel Wiener with the inspiration. Rabbi?
Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu, our source of good and blessing, affirming the power of human connection and community. As we learn this day about the struggles of so many to overcome the plague of addiction that racks our nation and drains our collective soul, let us remember that in ways small and large, all of us are broken, all are challenged, all are striving to attain a better life and a better way to live. And so, though we may not suffer from this affliction, we still know what it is to hurt, to want, to seek the helping, healing balm of the human touch, even when mediated by modern technology. With a humility that comes from true empathy, with a commitment that comes from pure conviction, and with a faith that comes from the possibilities of our very humanity. Let us hear one another with open hearts. Let us act for one another with good intention. Let us love one another with unqualified grace. May this be your will. May this be our way. And let us say, Amen.
And so moving on to our main program, we have Nathan Donahue to introduce our main program. So Nathan, he has a lot of initials behind his last name. He has his CFP, his CLU, his CLT. So these initials help him run a financial planning practice with Northwestern Mutual, where he specializes in serving professionals who are looking to retire in the next 10 years, and also works with executives from the Fortune 100 tech firms. So for fun, Nathan takes any opportunity to hop on a plane. In fact, he just returned from a 2-week trip to Italy, where he visited 6 cities, saw the Formula One Grand Prix at Monza racetrack, and, swoon, proposed to his fiancée, Joanne, in Venice, and she said yes. So please welcome to the stage, newly engaged Nathan Donahue.
Thank you, President Cindy. Today we have the pleasure of hearing from Daniela, Luzi, Tudor, and Murphy Jensen, co-founders of WeConnect Health. WeConnect is a healthcare technology company solving the biggest public health crisis of our time, addiction recovery. Millions of Americans are struggling with addiction to drugs and alcohol, and 80% of patients relapse following inpatient treatment. WeConnect has developed an innovative technology solution based on techniques that will decrease relapse by over 50% versus traditional methods. Daniela is the founder and CEO of WeConnect, an evidence-based platform improving outcomes, reducing relapses, and addressing this epidemic. This venture is guided by Ms. Tudor's core mission, using the vast potential of technology to connect people and communities for measurable outcomes. The story behind Daniela's inspiration for WeConnect and her other ventures has been featured in Forbes, TechCrunch, GeekWire, Wired Magazine, Seattle Times, and more. With her, we also have Murphy Jensen. Murphy's an entrepreneur, former professional tennis player, and the founder and vice president of business development for WeConnect Health. Mr. Jensen works tirelessly to reduce the stigma of addiction and to lead others with this disorder to receive proper care. His goal is to bring awareness to addiction and leave behind a legacy of helping others. Mr. Jensen is also the former French Open champion. Please join me in welcoming Daniela, Luzi, Tudor, and Murphy Jensen.
Hey, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
All right. Thank you, first of all, to Seattle Rotary, particularly Nathan, my friend, for inviting us to be here today. It's an honor and a pleasure, and I've really enjoyed so far all of your traditions that you have. It's quite beautiful. So, as mentioned, I'm Daniela Tudor. I'm the CEO and co-founder of WeConnect. I'm also a person in long-term recovery from drug and alcohol addiction. I just celebrated 4 years in sobriety a couple months ago. And thank you. Before I get started, I actually have a couple questions for the audience. If you could raise your hand, how many of you are in healthcare? Anybody? Okay. And how many of you are in the technology field? All right. That's surprising for Seattle. Not that many in this room. Okay, great. So I'll tell you a little bit of a story of how Murphy and I came to meet, and then we'll get into sort of what we do and the impact that we're looking to make. I love the mission that Cindy's come up with for this year of impact, and I think that's really important as a society. So my background is in technology primarily. I built system engineering teams and software development teams for companies like Microsoft, Union Bank, IT departments of major motion picture studios, and always had a entrepreneurial bent. My family and I immigrated here when I was 12 from Romania, and my dad was very entrepreneurial minded. He inspired me to read about Richard Branson and his ventures from a very young age. And I had other entrepreneurial ventures that were not in the healthcare field at the time, music technology and in nightlife, and also in technology recruiting. And so my venture before this one, my co-founder for that, who's my best friend today, she lives in LA, she sat me down one day and she said, look, I really care about you and I love you, but you have a major drinking and drug problem. And she was the only person that I could hear, because other people in my life had attempted to tell me before, but I never actually heard them. She did it in a kind and loving way, and I was able to hear what she had to say. However, coming from an Eastern European background, we didn't have a lot of knowledge around what recovery is, therapy, or any of those things. And so I moved back to Seattle from Los Angeles, and I tried to stop using and drinking on my own, which now to come find out that recovery doesn't work without community and resources. And so after 18 months of trying and struggling on my own and hitting my last bottom, I landed in inpatient treatment, and it was there that I discovered a lot of things. One, that the relapse rate is alarmingly high. In fact, today in the United States, we have 20 million people in long-term recovery, 23 million seeking treatment, and only 3.1 million of people actually get the treatment that they need for only drug and alcohol addiction. So that doesn't even count those suffering from eating disorders, which is a form of addiction, gambling, sex, technology and screen addiction, workaholism. When you look at those figures, a lot of us need help and support. And so I landed in inpatient treatment, and for the first time in my life, I felt genuinely connected to other humans. And to find out that the relapse rate was so high, I was very distraught. And I looked around, and coming from a technology background, I also looked at the treatment center, and it looked like everything was on legacy software, pen and paper, and everybody was just overworked and underappreciated. And I thought, we gotta do better. And at my day 28, before I got discharged from inpatient, I was given a piece of paper, and it said, if you do these 10 things listed on here, which is 12-step community meetings, doctor appointments, outpatient therapy, meditation, if you do all of these things every single day for the rest of your life, you'll stay in recovery. And then they sent me on my way. And I thought, no wonder the relapse rate is so high. If all you're getting is a piece of paper, after being in the confines of a rehab for 28 days compared to 11 years of continuous use of drugs and alcohol. So that was the genesis for the idea for WeConnect. And if I could remind you that I was a big fan of Richard Branson, so in those first 90 days out of treatment, I entered a contest, and it was a contest that called out for naming your top 3 bucket list items, and by creativity, we're going to pick a winner to go to his island during Necker Cup and meet Richard Branson for 5 days. So I entered this contest, and I ended up winning. And so The 3 entries, by the way, were to be in a developing, and these are real bucket list items of mine, to be in a developing country during a natural disaster to volunteer. The second is to live on the World Ship for 1 year, which is this cruise ship that goes around the world, and it's got 100 condo units on it. And then the third is to be on a private jet going over different time zones during New Year's Eve. So at 90 days sober, terrified because I'd never flown sober before since the age of 14, I get on a plane and I land there, and it's during Necker Cup, which, by the way, is a big celebration of Richard Branson and 250 of his closest friends. And I look on the tennis court and I see a very charismatic individual emceeing the event, and that was Murphy.
Hello, everybody.
And I returned from this trip, and someone in my outpatient said, hey, I know you're working on this idea to prevent people from relapsing and helping with addiction recovery, and my ex-girlfriend's sister is married to the gentleman that was emceeing the event, and you two need to talk because he's also in long-term recovery, and he's looking for something meaningful to do beyond this great success that he's had as a professional athlete and networking and all of those things. So with that, I want to introduce Murphy Jensen, and we're going to kick off his story with a short video.
We were just 2 brothers from a Christmas tree farm in northern Michigan, and last week of May, first week of June, at the Great French Open, I'm playing in my very first French Open championships. And the day before the tournament started on a Sunday, my brother tells me, you know, man, we can win this thing. And I'm thinking, what are you talking about, we can win this thing? I'm just happy to be in Paris. And 2 weeks later, the Jensen brothers became French Open champions. And it changed our lives forever.
Murphy Jensen!
When we got back to the States, it wasn't Tennis Magazine that was looking to do stories on us. It was Rolling Stone magazine, People magazine. We were the long-haired, Harley-riding, rock and roll playing Jensen brothers, and they had coined us grunge tennis. And it sold the game of tennis. It sold the game of doubles. You know, I really wasn't prepared for the attention that my brother and I then got. The temptations that are out there when you get success, there's nightclubs, there's parties. I remember being invited to the Playboy Mansion on a number of occasions. That lifestyle, as I have realized, is my way of coping with the attention.
Now comes the Murphy Jensen saga. First, he slept through a qualifying match at Nottingham the week before Wimbledon. Then yesterday at Wimbledon, he disappeared after failing to show for a mixed doubles match with Brenda Schultz-McCarthy.
I started missing some of the events that I was scheduled for. I found myself drinking to excess and then eventually using drugs. I had so much fear of being found out. I had so much fear of losing and affecting and hurting the people around me as a result that I really kept it a secret. The game changer was the US Open in 1999. My son was being born during the tournament, and just the pressure of the game, the work, the life. I remember wanting to jump out of a window. Luckily, I didn't do that. Instead, I shut the whole world out, family, friends, anybody that cared about me. And I was in a hotel room on Sunset Strip. And instead of the manager of this hotel calling the police, he luckily called an interventionist. And that interventionist asked me if I'd be willing to get help. And I got it. I have continuous long-term recovery since June 1st of 2006. I attend support group meetings. I have mentors and teachers. It really is the centerpiece of my life. I'm now the co-founder of a healthcare technology company designed to prevent relapse from drug and alcohol addiction. We've been featured in Forbes magazine. Our company won TechCrunch Seattle. And then we went on to a thing called TechCrunch Disrupt. And walking on that stage with my co-founders and being announced as Murphy Jensen, co-founder of WeConnect, a technology company that's going to help people struggling with drug and alcohol issues and behavioral health issues, without question was one of the greatest moments of my life. that there is more that I can do out there beyond hit forehands and backhands and rock and roll tennis. But what I hope to be remembered for isn't winning tennis matches. I hope to be remembered for someone that helped people, that did some good things, that had a lot of fun.
Thank you, everybody. I don't watch that without getting a little choked up. Because this morning I wake up to a 10-month-old little baby that was born over here in Swedish, and my 19-year-old son 2 days ago, who's now going to be attending Seattle U. And so recovery for me goes way beyond not drinking or using. It's given me a life beyond measure. So, not to be the emotional one today, but it's real. And I sit here today in front of you, we sit here in front of you as a result of one principle: service. I got back from Richard Branson's island, and my wife's family friend was an outpatient who I hadn't met, and they asked if I'd take him to a support group meeting. And of course, that's what keeps me right-sized and in a place where my recovery comes first in everything. And as a result of helping somebody, I meet Daniela Tudor, who's been such a gift in my life. And I found that, what is a tennis guy? How does he end up in the world of technology? How does he end up here? And it's all as a result of, you can't tell Wall Street divine intervention. They want to look at, what are the financials and things like that. But truth of the matter is that's exactly what it is. It's an honor and a privilege to be sitting here in front of all of you today. I really like to, what's meaningful to me today is, hearing and being close to the solution on a day-to-day basis. And my heart goes out to anybody in this room today that has lost a loved one, because it's been a horrible couple years for the addiction space and the recovery space, with accidental overdose through the roof. I've lost 6 friends in the past 5 months. And these aren't people that are on the street. These are everybody that's being affected by addiction today. And can't wait to share with you our platform. But for me, this is going to prove to be the most important work of my lifetime. I'm sure of it. Because when I was a young boy, driving home from a tennis tournament with our dad, maybe 8, 9, from New Orleans back to Michigan, Dad gets pulled over, leaving my 11-year-old brother and I to drive home, and comes back 30 days later to never drink again. And one of the biggest gifts I got was when he passed, he knew that his son was a sober member in a support community that was going to, I could take care of his family. I mean, that's responsibility that's beyond a job. My job today is to serve Daniela and our company that's going to eventually serve, our community across the country. But thank you so much, Cindy, Nathan, Rabbi. Your prayer there was perfect for today. And, I'm really humbled. I don't sit here. Now, if you want to know about Serena, my thoughts on that, we're going to do a Q&A following our little presentation. I've gotten more calls about that. I've been there, by the way. But I've had so much fun, and now I live in Seattle, and this town is, it's been a dream of mine. to live here since I was in high school. I grew up on this Christmas tree farm, not a hog farm, Ken, and on a salmon stream. So I'm close to nature. And your tagline, your mission is impact and action, action and impact. And that's what keeps me right-sized. That keeps me vertical a day at a time. Daniela?
So thank you so much, Murphy. So
Thank you.
going back to that moment when I came out with a piece of paper from treatment, what I assumed and what I came to believe is that relapse had two main causes. Relapse is caused by lack of accountability to that treatment plan and lack of connection in real time with your support community. And I also came to find out that one of the central problems and why this epidemic has had more deaths than the AIDS epidemic, more deaths than the Vietnam War, is because as a society we're treating it like an acute healthcare problem. People go into detox, people go into the emergency room, we only have 28-day treatment if insurance covers it. And after that, we assume that people are just going to be able to go out and function just fine. And that's not how addiction works. Addiction is a biopsychosocial healthcare condition that's chronic. It is a lifelong condition that requires treatment every single day in the form of support community, in a form of therapy, in the form of exercise and meditation, or a combination of all those things. And that's what we aim to do. We aim to impact the relapse rate and save lives and help families heal, and provide outcomes data throughout the healthcare ecosystem in a way that's going to transform the way that we treat addiction today. So how do we do that? The first product that we developed is the patient-facing mobile application. And the way that it functions is that it allows the individual to add all of their support routines onto the application. So whether it is meditation, 12-step meeting, therapy session, and the application automatically checks the individual into that activity when they arrive at that location. We use geofencing in the phone to verify that the person arrived at that location. And then we also identify risk by tracking the behavior on the app. So we've developed a patent-pending risk score algorithm that tracks behavior on the app as well as historical behavior on the app. And for those of you that are in healthcare, if in that instance with the provider that we're working with, it integrates with their electronic health record system, we can also look at historical data. So if somebody's suffering from addiction as well as schizophrenia and bipolar, and they miss a doctor's meeting or a doctor's appointment, we know that their risk needs to be incrementally, exponentially higher than somebody without a co-occurring disorder. So really we started with substance use disorders, but we can actually broaden out all the way out to behavioral health, but this is our first core focus. We've also done something else that's really unique in this space, which is we looked at tons of research. Our scientists and data scientists looked at research on what is the most effective way to treat between cognitive behavioral therapy, community approach, which is also combined into our application. We found out that contingency management is actually the most effective form of treatment. Contingency management is a fancy word for giving rewards and vouchers for behavior change. And so we've digitized that entire process onto our mobile application. So when you walk into your doctor's appointment or you go to your 12-step meetings, and at the end of the week you reach a milestone that you've completed a certain percentage of your recovery activities, in the application you receive a digitized gift card based on the geography that you're living in. So people are able to accrue fitness memberships, Starbucks cards, Amazon gift cards. Depending on what the geography is, they have a vast choice of what those rewards are. We've also figured out with our scientists when the timing of that should be. So we looked at gamification methods that make digital apps so exciting and engaging to use. And there was this matrix of 64 modalities to do that. And so we went away with the negative reinforcement ones. So if you play Candy Crush, we did not use any of those methods that keeps you engaged in Candy Crush, okay? But we looked at what is positive reinforcement that makes the person feel good and actually motivates them and encourages them to stay engaged in their recovery. So we utilized all those methods to build the application. In the application, you can also connect to your peers. your family and loved ones, as well as your clinician or your counselor or social worker. And we are HIPAA compliant on both of our platforms. This is really important. We hold privacy as a very high standard, and so actually nobody's even searchable on the apps. We've had, some very high net worth folks on the app that regard privacy as really important, and also the general public is generally not very open at first when they first get into recovery to disclose that that's something that they're engaging in. And so privacy is very important. The individual chooses who they connect with on the platform, and you're not searchable on the app. So this is just a couple more screens to show you what it looks like. Oh, what's going on with the deck? All right. So at a practical level, you may ask, how does this actually work? So the way that we get communities engaged onto our app is that somebody arrives at a treatment center, drug court, outpatient, medically assisted treatment clinic, and they're able to receive the app from that provider. The provider then plugs into an enterprise product that we developed, which is a data dashboard where they can do case management, they can see reporting and analytics on their entire population. And then they use those reports to go back to the insurance company to show how they're performing, go for reimbursement. One of the most shocking things that we found out when we piloted this patient-facing application that just shocked me from a statistics perspective and business practice is that up until products like ours came to the surface, that a treatment center would call a patient one time a year and ask if they're still sober, and they would count that as a successful outcome back to the insurance company. So, in the last few years, this was discovered, and the insurance companies as well as the accreditation firms have gotten really, really strict in terms of wanting more verified outcomes data, and that's exactly what we provide. So in real time, we're able to show every individual's behavior. Also, the clinician's able to intervene instantly before relapse actually happens. Relapse typically takes a couple weeks to actually manifest into use, and you can see that slowly if you're with someone all the time by the deterioration of their behavior, if they're attending meetings or not, if they're acting, different than when they're doing those things. And typically it takes a couple weeks for that to happen, and so with our platform, you're able to instantly see that. Can we move to the next slide, please? All right, so this is just a little bit more detail at a practical level, how our member life cycle happens. And if we could go to the next slide. All right, this is more information on our robust reward system. Again, we're able to serve these digitally, and it's been a really successful part of our engagement. In fact, in Toledo, Ohio, which is really torn by the epidemic, we've seen 76% engagement on our app over the course of 6 months. So that's actually flipping the statistic on its head. We also have thought about economically challenged populations. So we have a partnership with T-Mobile where we can provide phones at a very low cost and also educate the population in terms of how we can affect and provide them with a smartphone so they can actually go to job interviews, and it changes the quality of life beyond just recovery. This is just a view of the data dashboard that, again, clinicians are able to look at and see the reporting and analytics around their members. We're also now moving to a model from working with just providers to working with an insurance company. So we're in the last stages right now with one of the nation's major payers. Later this month, we're going down to Atlanta and meeting with the key stakeholders. So that'll give us even a bigger market where we're able to provide people with the support that they need, and they'll get it reimbursed on their insurance. We also thought a lot about implementation. So this is one of the key problems when you're looking at technology and working with providers or healthcare systems that tend to have legacy systems. So we've developed a digital learning management system that takes really smart videos, and we've gamified this for actually the providers as well. So the staff members at a treatment center, they also get rewards and incentives for doing the training and then deploying WeConnect. So with that, before I wrap up, I just want to share a little bit more that drills a little bit deeper into our mission. So our mission goes beyond just recovery. We really want to affect behavioral health in rural areas. As you know, the addiction epidemic has really afflicted areas that don't even have access to care. And so with our programs, we're able to do that. We can also improve with the T-Mobile partnership that we have with the phones, the digital literacy. And so we're able to help communities learn how to use a smartphone and use that for, again, quality of life improvement. We also have seen high engagement on our platform for folks that are ages 13 to 18. And so one of our biggest sort of mission and charters in terms of our behavioral health impact is resiliency tools for children. And so we're closely monitoring the data and analytics on that as well. And ultimately, we're here to impact the social determinants of health. So looking at how does our platform and recovery impact their quality of life? How can we then also gain data on their environment? And how can we then step into other areas of healthcare beyond behavioral health? We're also looking into the long-term future in terms of eating disorders or technology addiction. All of these other conditions that are just as damaging and create just as much suffering and difficulty for family systems, but aren't so at the forefront of the news, because right now what we're seeing is death toll that the opioid epidemic has taken. But if we're looking, for example, at alcoholism, it's the cause of 200 plus health conditions, and it is actually main cause for domestic violence. And so when you're looking at addiction as an entire umbrella, it's affecting the majority of the country. I don't think anybody goes unaffected from their family or friends or coworkers. And so we've decided to attack sort of what's most pressing and what's really causing the death toll to rise, as I mentioned. But beyond that, we have an opportunity here to use the same framework to impact other populations as well. So with that, I want to thank everybody again for having us. And Murphy, partner.
Daniela. Well, by the way, 3 years ago, I had no idea what she was talking about. You know, UI, UAE, integration, interface design. I'm like, what are you talking about? What do you need? And together we've made a special partnership because, A, we're inspired by one another, and the mission, you know, we hear mission, values, principles, those things in, you know, it's commonplace in companies. But if we don't live by those personally, honesty, trustworthiness, open-mindedness, we relapse. Big deal. And what's so special about this is that we take a 28-day program and turn it into a 365-day program by having the patient tethered to the key stakeholders in the recovery activities and accountable for those activities. And the relapse rate drops 60% at day 365. It's our belief that you're going to make better decisions. I know I did at day 365 about my future than at day 28.
Awesome.
Any questions?
Take questions now.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
We have a question here to your left. Jen Levy.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. It's fascinating. I'm curious to know what your economic model is. How are you funded? Where does that, I'm assuming the end patient is not paying for this app. So how is it funded?
Sure. So, well, as a company, we have investors. We're a privately held social purpose corporation, which is basically like a benefit corp, except Washington State decided to call it something different. So that's on the funding side, and we actually recently closed our Series A. And so in terms of our economics, the treatment centers and the drug courts and the clinics up until now have been actually ingesting the cost per patient for 12 months. The reason they were motivated to do so is because we provide verified outcomes data that impact their accreditation and reimbursement. But now that we've developed this robust contingency management, digitized rewards program, and our relapse algorithm, and really matured the products, we've increased the annual pricing. And so some institutions are still ingesting that cost, or they're doing it as a cost that goes under the umbrella of the auxiliary services that the family is paying for. Now, that's short term. Our long-term strategy is to be part either a global health plan for the insurance company or as part of a cost savings program for the insurance companies. So depending on that, the price is going to be impacted from $9.99 for 12 months per patient if it's the cost savings program. But if you're looking at a global health plan that's available to all the millions of members, you're looking at $1.50 per month per member for a 3-year contract. So.
Thank you.
Hi, I've got a question over here.
Oh, hi.
Hi. I have a question about the product. I definitely see the value in this, from taking people that are addicted or using, making sure that they can get clean, what that savings can be to a carrier. And I know of a similar product that's being used right now for diabetics. That's a Bluetooth-based system, but the difference in that one is that it monitors the injections of insulin and also the sugar in their system. If you can catch diabetes and control it at a young stage, it won't turn into all the costly expenditures that it does when you don't take care of diabetes. Same with yours. So, are you looking at adding a stage where you would actually not only monitor their recovery, but through blood samples or something else, be able to monitor that they are staying clean and sober?
Yeah, so our application is, in its essence, verifies that. So if somebody is still in recovery, they're continuously doing their recovery activities, which are verified by location in the app. So if the person goes to the wrong location or is not there for a certain duration of time at their appointments, their 12-step meetings or whatever recovery program that they're doing, the app creates an alert, and then we know that they're a risk for relapse. In terms of future roadmap, we are studying and looking at a ton of sensors, but that would be probably too close to turning back point when you're verifying the blood level or BAC or anything like that. One way that we're looking at partnering and doing something similar to what you're talking about is we do verify if somebody goes to take their urine analysis at a clinic, but eventually integrating with a partner that can send us their urine analysis results, I think would probably be more, much more efficient way of being able to monitor that. So,
We have another question back in the back to your left.
Hi, thank you. You talked a little bit about insurance. By the way, this is my girlfriend, Daniela, so I full disclosure.
Is this a loaded question?
You talked a little bit about insurance companies and what would incentivize them to use your product. And one of the things I thought was fascinating, and I'm hoping you can expand on, is what are the savings for insurance companies? It's a preventative medicine in a sense. And do you have any information on how that would translate societally to, given what we spend on healthcare and all that?
thanks for asking a hard question. No. So just to give you, I think the easiest parallel to it is if you think about a ER visit, which usually what happens upon when somebody overdoses or relapses, usually that's when really heavy use happens. That's $30,000 cost to the system, whereas our platform costs $1,000 for the year. So if you're thinking about even just saving one instance of an ER visit, the cost savings are through the roof. So we have different line items where we look at different cost savings on claims data, and so that's probably the easiest way to give you the magnitude of it.
And one last question.
Understand how people would find you through the doctor's office or through a treatment center. But how about folks that don't come that direction? How about folks that come through employee assistance programs into a 12-step or come through family or friends? But how would they ever find WeConnect?
Yeah, so we're addressing that here in the very, very near future, actually. We're kicking off a campaign with our V2 release. So starting October 24th on our website at WeConnectRecovery.com, there's resources as well as in the App Store. You can find our application, and there's information there about how you can start utilizing it if you're a direct consumer or family. So thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
So, in closing, I'll close with a proverb related to our guest speakers. Such a powerful program, and there's so many themes on addiction and recovery and innovation and making impact. So I thought about how both Murphy and Jensen traveled their own potential paths of destruction and came through to the light, and they learned valuable lessons and used their experience and skills to do good in the world. So it's very admirable. So I found this quote from the Cherokee Indian tribe, just like Daniela and Murphy, that remind us to live with purpose and meaning. When you were born, you cried and the world rejoiced. Live your life so that when you die, the world cries and you rejoice. Great meeting, everyone. See you next time.